When I walked into the office that Monday morning, I never expected my world to collapse in the next 5 minutes. I had been working at Stellar Tech for 3 years, grinding my way up from junior developer to senior project lead. The job was demanding, but I loved it. More importantly, I loved Andrea. We had been together for 2 years, and I thought we were building something real. That morning, I was heading to my boss Richard's office to discuss the new client presentation. As I approached, I heard laughter inside. Familiar laughter. I knocked twice, but there was no response. The door was slightly ajar, so I pushed it open. There they were. Andrea and Richard. Her arms wrapped around his neck. His hands on her waist. They were kissing like the world didn't exist. Like I didn't exist. I stood frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. Then Andrea turned her head and saw me. For a split second, her eyes widened. But instead of panic or guilt, I saw something worse. Annoyance. Richard pulled away slowly, straightening his tie like nothing had happened. He looked at me with this smug expression, like he had just won something. Like I was just an obstacle he had finally overcome. Andrea sighed, running her fingers through her hair. Henry, this isn't what it looks like. I almost laughed. That line. That ridiculous, insulting line that every cheater uses when they're caught, red-handed. Really? I managed to say, my voice surprisingly calm. Because it looks like you're making out with my boss. Richard leaned back against his desk, crossing his arms. He wasn't even trying to hide his satisfaction. Henry, let's be adults about this. These things happen. Andrea and I have developed a connection. A real connection. I looked at Andrea, waiting for her to say something. Anything. To tell me this was a mistake, that she was sorry, that she never meant for this to happen. But she just stood there, avoiding my eyes. Henry, I was going to tell you, she said softly. I just didn't know how. So you thought I'd find out like this? I asked, my voice cracking despite my efforts to stay composed. Richard pushed off from the desk and walked toward me. Look, Henry, you're a good employee. Let's not make this messy. What happens between Andrea and me has nothing to do with your job here. I stared at him, disbelief flooding through me. He was talking to me like I was the problem. Like I was the one making things difficult. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I stopped being the nice guy who always played by the rules. Let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand how deep this betrayal cut. My name is Henry Lawson, and I'm 29 years old. I grew up in a middle-class family in the suburbs. My father was a high school teacher, and my mother worked as a nurse. They taught me the value of hard work, honesty, and loyalty. I carried those values with me through college and into my career. I graduated with a degree in computer science and landed a job at Stellar Tech, a mid-sized software development company. It wasn't a giant corporation, but it was growing fast, and the work was challenging. I started as a junior developer, spending long hours coding, debugging, and learning everything I could. Richard Hayes was my boss. He was the head of the development department, and everyone respected him. He was in his mid-40s, charismatic, confident, and always impeccably dressed. He had a way of making you feel like you were part of something important. I admired him. I looked up to him. I wanted to be like him. That's the part that hurts the most. I trusted him. I met Andrea 2 years ago at a company party. She didn't work at Stellar Tech. She was a graphic designer at a marketing agency, and she had come as a +1 with one of my co-workers. The moment I saw her, I was captivated. She had long dark hair, bright green eyes, and this infectious laugh that made everyone around her smile. We hit it off immediately. We talked for hours that night about everything from our favorite movies to our career ambitions. She was ambitious, creative, and had this energy that made me feel alive. By the end of the night, I had her number, and we went on our first date 3 days later. The first 6 months were like a dream. We spent every free moment together. She would come over to my apartment, and we'd cook dinner together, watch movies, and talk until the early hours of the morning. She made me feel like I was the only person in the world who mattered. I remember the first time I told her I loved her. We were walking along the riverfront on a cool autumn evening. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I stopped, turned to her, and just said it. I love you, Andrea. She smiled, her eyes sparkling, and said, I love you too, Henry. I introduced her to my parents after 8 months. They adored her. My mother kept saying how lucky I was to have found someone so wonderful. My father, who was usually reserved, even joked about when we were going to give him grandchildren. Everything seemed perfect. But looking back now, I can see the cracks that I ignored. About a year into our relationship, Andrea started acting differently. She became distant. She'd cancel plans at the last minute, saying she was busy with work. She'd spend hours on her phone, texting and smiling at the screen, but whenever I asked who she was talking to, she'd brush it off. Just a friend. Just work stuff. I convinced myself I was being paranoid. She loved me. She told me every day. Why would I doubt her? Then, about 6 months ago, something changed at work too. Richard started paying more attention to me. He'd invite me to lunch, ask for my opinions on projects, and even started mentioning promotions. I thought he was mentoring me, grooming me for a leadership role. But then I noticed something strange. He started asking about Andrea. Casual questions at first. How's your girlfriend? What does she do? Does she like her job? I didn't think much of it. I thought he was just being friendly, trying to connect with me on a personal level. Around the same time, Andrea started mentioning Richard too. She'd ask about him. What's your boss like? Is he nice? Does he treat you well? I told her Richard was great, that I was lucky to have him as a boss. What an idiot I was. 3 months ago, Andrea suggested we all go out for dinner. She said it would be nice for her to meet the people I worked with, to understand my world better. I thought it was a sweet gesture. So I arranged a dinner with a few coworkers, including Richard. That night, I watched them interact. They were friendly, polite, nothing out of the ordinary. But there was something in the way they looked at each other. A glance that lasted a second too long. A smile that seemed too familiar. I shook it off. I was being paranoid again. But after that dinner, things got worse. Andrea became even more distant. She stopped saying I love you as often. She'd come home late, claiming she was working on a big project. She'd receive calls and step outside to answer them, saying it was her boss and she needed privacy. I wanted to confront her, to ask her what was going on. But I was afraid. Afraid of the answer. Afraid of losing her. So I stayed silent. I convinced myself that if I just worked harder, if I was more attentive, if I was a better boyfriend, things would get better. I even planned a surprise weekend getaway for us. I booked a cabin by the lake, the same place we had gone on our first anniversary. I thought maybe if we could get away from everything, we could reconnect. But when I told her about it, she barely reacted. That's nice, Henry. But I'm really busy right now. Can we do it another time? Another time never came. 2 weeks ago, I found a receipt in her purse. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for my car keys, which I thought she had accidentally taken. The receipt was from an expensive restaurant downtown. The date was from a Friday night, when she had told me she was working late. The receipt was for 2 people. Champagne. Steak. Dessert. The total was over $300. I confronted her about it. She didn't even flinch. It was a work dinner, Henry. My boss took the team out to celebrate a project milestone. But I saw her boss's name on her phone once. It wasn't the same name as the one on the credit card used for that receipt. The name on the receipt was Richard Hayes. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I needed proof. I needed to be sure. That's why when I walked into Richard's office that Monday morning and saw them together, I wasn't completely shocked. Part of me had known. Part of me had been preparing for this moment. But knowing and seeing are 2 very different things. I stood there in Richard's office, staring at the 2 people who had betrayed me, and I felt something inside me break. Not my heart. My heart had been cracking for months. This was something deeper. My sense of self. My belief that the world was fair. That good people were rewarded. That loyalty meant something. Richard cleared his throat, breaking the silence. Henry, close the door. Let's talk about this like adults. I didn't move. I couldn't. My legs felt like they were made of stone. Andrea finally stepped forward, her hands clasped together nervously. Henry, please. Let me explain. Explain? I repeated. My voice hollow. Explain what? How long this has been going on? How many times you lied to me? She flinched, but Richard put a hand on her shoulder. A possessive gesture that made my blood boil. Henry, don't take this out on Andrea. If you want to be angry at me. I turned my gaze to him, this man I had respected, admired, trusted. You're my boss. You knew about us. You knew we were together, and you still went after her. He shrugged, completely unbothered. Feelings don't follow rules, Henry. Andrea and I connected. It wasn't planned. It just happened. It just happened, I echoed bitterly. That's your excuse? Andrea stepped closer, her eyes pleading. Henry, you have to understand. Things between us had been stale for a while. We weren't connecting anymore. Richard understands me in ways you never did. Her words were like knives. Stale? We were stale? I had been trying. I had been planning trips, buying her favorite flowers, cooking her favorite meals. And she thought we were stale. So instead of talking to me about it, you decided to cheat? I asked, my voice rising. It's not cheating if I was already emotionally checked out. She shot back, her tone defensive. I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. This wasn't the woman I fell in love with. This wasn't the woman who told me I was her everything. Richard sighed, like this entire conversation was inconvenient for him. Look, Henry, I get it. You're hurt. But we're all adults here. Andre and I are together now. You need to accept that and move on. Move on? I repeated, incredulous. You think I can just move on, like nothing happened? What else are you going to do? Richard asked, his tone condescending. Make a scene? 'Cause drama? That's not going to change anything. He was right about one thing. Making a scene wouldn't change anything, but it would make me feel better. I turned to Andre, locking eyes with her. Are you serious about him? Is this what you really want? She hesitated for a moment, glancing at Richard before nodding. Yes. Henry. I'm sorry. But yes. That was all I needed to hear. I turned and walked out of the office, ignoring Richard's voice calling after me. I walked past my coworkers, past the break room, past the receptionist, and straight out the front door. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, staring at the steering wheel, trying to process everything. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Messages from Andre. Messages from Richard. I ignored them all. Finally, I drove home, packed a bag, and checked into a hotel. I needed space. I needed time to think. That night, lying in the unfamiliar hotel bed, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be the victim in this story. I wasn't going to let them win. I spent the next 2 days researching. I knew Richard's position at Stellar Tech was secure. He had been with the company for over 15 years. He was well connected, well liked, and seemingly untouchable. But I also knew something else. Stellar Tech was a subsidiary of a larger corporation, Vanguard Industries. And Vanguard had recently been looking to restructure its subsidiaries, bringing in new leadership to drive growth. I had a college friend, Janet, who worked in Vanguard's corporate strategy department. We had stayed in touch over the years, occasionally meeting for coffee to catch up. I called her and asked if we could meet. We met at a small cafe downtown. Janet was sharp, ambitious, and always 10 steps ahead of everyone else. She had climbed the corporate ladder quickly, and now she was one of the key decision makers at Vanguard. Henry, it's been too long, she said, smiling warmly as she sat down across from me. What's going on? You sounded stressed on the phone. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her everything. About Andre. About Richard. About how they had betrayed me. Janet listened carefully, her expression growing more serious with each word. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and sighed. That's rough, Henry. I'm sorry you're going through this. I'm not looking for sympathy, I said. I'm looking for an opportunity. She raised an eyebrow. What kind of opportunity? I want Richard out, I said bluntly. And I want his job. Janet studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Vanguard has been considering a leadership change at Stellar Tech. Richard's department has been underperforming lately. Missed deadlines. Budget overruns. If someone were to step in and prove they could do better, Vanguard would be open to it. I can do better, I said firmly. I know that company inside and out. I know the projects, the clients, the team. I can turn that department around. Janet smiled. I believe you. But you'll need to prove it. Vanguard doesn't make changes lightly. I'll prove it, I said. Just give me the chance. She extended her hand across the table. Consider it done. We shook hands, and for the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked harder than I ever had in my life. I put together a comprehensive proposal for restructuring the development department, complete with budget projections, timelines, and strategies for improving efficiency. I reached out to clients, secured testimonials, and even landed a new contract that Richard had been trying to close for months. Janet presented my proposal to the Vanguard board, and within days, I received a call. They wanted to meet with me. The meeting was intense. The board grilled me on every detail of my proposal, testing my knowledge, my confidence, my vision. But I was ready. I answered every question with precision and conviction. At the end of the meeting, the chairman of the board stood and extended his hand. Welcome to the leadership team, Henry. Effective immediately, you'll be taking over as head of the development department at Stellar Tech. I shook his hand, a smile spreading across my face. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. As I walked out of that boardroom, I felt invincible. Richard had no idea what was coming. Neither did Andre. This was just the beginning. The days leading up to my official takeover were the strangest of my life. I went to work every morning, sat at my desk, and pretended like nothing had changed. Richard still strutted around the office like he owned the place, barking orders and making snide comments. Andre still texted me occasionally, sending messages that ranged from apologetic to accusatory. Henry, we need to talk. This silent treatment is childish. I'm not giving you the silent treatment, Andre. I'm just done talking to you. You can't ignore me forever. We work in the same building. Actually, I can. Watch me. I blocked her number after that. There was nothing left to say. But even though I was moving forward with my plan, the emotional weight of everything was crushing. At night, alone in my apartment, the anger would fade and the sadness would creep in. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our relationship in my mind. Had there been signs earlier that I missed? Was I too focused on work, too boring, too predictable? No. I stopped myself every time those thoughts crept in. This wasn't my fault. I had been a good partner. I had been loyal, attentive, supportive. The problem wasn't me. The problem was them. Still, the pain was real. I had loved Andre. I had imagined a future with her. Marriage. Kids. Growing old together. And now all of that was gone, replaced by betrayal and lies. Some nights, I'd pull out my phone and scroll through old photos of us. Her laughing at one of my terrible jokes. Us dressed up for a friend's wedding. Her asleep on my couch with her head on my shoulder. Each photo felt like a punch to the gut. I wanted to hate her completely, to erase every good memory we had. But it wasn't that simple. You can't just turn off 2 years of love like flipping a switch. But I could channel that pain into something productive. Every time I felt weak, every time I wanted to call her or text her or beg her to come back, I reminded myself of what I saw in Richard's office. Her arms around his neck. His hands on her waist. The way she looked at me with annoyance instead of guilt. That memory became my fuel. Work became my obsession. I threw myself into every project, every task, every detail. My coworkers started noticing. Henry, are you okay? You've been here until midnight every night this week. I'm fine, I'd say with a tight smile. Just focused. Luis, one of my closest colleagues, pulled me aside one afternoon. Dude, what's going on? You've been acting weird since that day you came out of Richard's office looking like you'd seen a ghost. I'm just working on something big, I said vaguely. You'll see soon. He gave me a skeptical look but didn't push further. The hardest part was seeing Richard every day. He'd walk past my desk with that smug expression, sometimes stopping to give me pointless tasks just to assert his dominance. Henry, I need that report by end of day. Henry, can you stay late and fix this bug? Henry, make sure you update the client on the project delay. Every order felt like a test. Like he was daring me to push back, to show weakness, to give him a reason to fire me. But I stayed calm. I smiled. I said, sure, Richard. No problem. Because I knew something he didn't. His days were numbered. One afternoon, about a week before my official takeover, I was in the break room making coffee when Andre walked in. I hadn't seen her in person since that day in Richard's office. She looked different. Thinner. Tired. Her hair wasn't as perfectly styled as usual, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She stopped when she saw me, her hand hovering over the coffee pot. Henry. Andre, I said curtly, not looking at her. Can we please talk? She asked. Her voice soft. Almost pleading. There's nothing to talk about. Henry, please. I know I hurt you. I know what I did was wrong. But you have to understand, it wasn't about you. It was about me. I was unhappy, and I didn't know how to fix it. I turned to face her fully, crossing my arms. So you thought sleeping with my boss was the solution? She flinched. It wasn't like that. It just happened. We connected. He understands me. You keep saying that, I said coldly. That he understands you. But you never gave me the chance to understand you. You never talked to me about being unhappy. You just went behind my back. Tears welled up in her eyes. I was scared, Henry. I was scared you'd hate me if I told you the truth. And now? I asked. Do you think I don't hate you now? She looked down, wiping at her eyes. I don't know. I just know I miss you. Her words should have meant something. A month ago. They would have broken me. But now. They felt hollow. Empty. You miss me? I repeated, shaking my head. Or do you miss the version of me that didn't know the truth? The version that worshipped the ground you walked on? Henry, that's not fair. Fair? I let out a bitter laugh. You want to talk about fair? You cheated on me with my boss, Andre. You lied to me for months. You made me feel like I was crazy for being suspicious. And now you want to talk about fair? She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up a hand. Save it. I don't care anymore. You made your choice. Now, live with it. I walked out of the break room, leaving her standing there alone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Andre's words kept echoing in my mind. I miss you. Did she really miss me? Or was she just panicking because Richard wasn't the fantasy she thought he'd be? I grabbed my phone and pulled up Richard's social media. He hadn't posted anything about Andre. No couple photos. No declarations of love. Nothing. For someone who supposedly had this deep connection with her, he was keeping it remarkably quiet. Then I pulled up Andre's profile. She had posted a photo from a few days ago. It was a selfie, her smiling at the camera with the caption, "New Beginnings." But in the background, barely visible, was Richard. He was on his phone, not even looking at her. I zoomed in on the photo, studying his expression. He looked bored, disinterested. And suddenly, I understood. Richard didn't care about Andre. Not really. She was just a conquest to him. A way to feel powerful. A way to prove he could take whatever he wanted. And Andre was just now starting to realize it. Part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. She was getting what she deserved. But another part of me, a small part, that still remembered loving her, felt sad. Sad that she had thrown away something real for something so hollow. But that sadness didn't last long. Because the next day, I received the official email from Vanguard Industries. Subject: Leadership Transition at Stellar Tech. Effective immediately. Henry Lawson will assume the role of Head of Development at Stellar Tech. Richard Hayes will be transitioning out of his current role to pursue other opportunities. I read the email 3 times, letting the words sink in. It was done. Richard was out. And I was in. I sat back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. Tomorrow, I'd walk into that office, not as an employee, but as the boss. Richard had no idea what was coming. Neither did Andre. But they were about to find out. As I packed up my things that evening, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. For the first time, since that terrible morning, I was the one in control. And I was going to use that control to make sure Richard and Andre regretted every single decision they made. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about justice. About showing them that actions have consequences. That you can't just use people and throw them away without facing the fallout. I walked out of the office that night with my head held high, ready for what came next. Tomorrow, everything would change. The next morning, I arrived at Stellar Tech an hour earlier than usual. The office was quiet, only a few early birds at their desks. I went straight to what used to be Richard's office. What was now my office? I stood in the doorway for a moment, taking it all in. The mahogany desk. The leather chair. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. This was where Richard had sat when he betrayed me. This was where Andre had wrapped her arms around him. Now it was mine. I stepped inside and set my briefcase down on the desk. Within minutes, Janet arrived. She was representing Vanguard during the transition, there to make sure everything went smoothly. Ready for this? She asked, a knowing smile on her face. More than ready. Good. Because Richard will be here any minute. HR sent him a meeting request this morning. He has no idea what's coming. Perfect, I said. Janet handed me a folder. This is everything you need. His severance package, the official termination letter, and the company's statement regarding the leadership change. I flipped through the documents, my heart pounding with anticipation. This is really happening. It really is, Janet confirmed. And Henry, for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. You could have fallen apart after what they did to you. Instead, you rose above it. I haven't risen above anything, I said honestly. I'm just making sure they pay for what they did. Sometimes that's the same thing, she replied. At exactly 9 o'clock, Richard walked into the office. He stopped short when he saw me sitting behind his desk. Henry? What are you doing in my office? I stood up slowly, buttoning my suit jacket. This isn't your office anymore, Richard. It's mine. His expression shifted from confusion to anger. What the hell are you talking about? Janet stepped forward, handing him an envelope. Mr. Hayes. Effective immediately. Your employment with Stellar Tech has been terminated. This envelope contains your severance package and all relevant documentation. Richard stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. This is a joke, right? It's not a joke, I said calmly. Vanguard Industries has decided to restructure the leadership team. I've been appointed as the new head of development. You're out. His face turned red, his hands clenching into fists. You did this. I did what you should have been doing all along, I said. Leading. Your department has been underperforming for months. Missed deadlines. Blown budgets. Unhappy clients. Vanguard needed someone who could actually get results. Richard took a step toward me, his voice low and dangerous. You think you can just take my job? You think you can waltz in here and replace me? I didn't take your job, I corrected. I earned it. You lost it the moment you decided sleeping with my girlfriend was more important than doing your actual work. The room went silent. Janet's eyes widened slightly, though she quickly composed herself. Richard's jaw tightened, his entire body rigid with rage. You're doing this because of Andre, he spat. This is pathetic, Henry. You're pathetic. Maybe. I said with a shrug. But I'm also your boss now. Well, actually, I'm not your boss. Because you don't work here anymore. Richard's hands trembled, and for a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing at me. But Janet stepped between us. Mr. Hayes, I suggest you leave the premises immediately. Security has already been notified. If you refuse to go peacefully, they will escort you out. Richard glared at me, his eyes filled with pure hatred. You're going to regret this. No, I said firmly. You're going to regret underestimating me. He stood there for another moment, breathing heavily, before finally snatching the envelope from Janet's hand and storming out of the office. I watched him go, feeling a surge of satisfaction. Janet let out a breath. Well, that went better than expected. I thought he might actually hit you. He wanted to, I said. But he's too much of a coward. She laughed. So, what's your first move as the new boss? I thought for a moment, then smiled. Call an all-staff meeting. I want everyone to know there's new leadership. And I want to make some changes. Within the hour, the entire development team was gathered in the conference room. I stood at the front, looking out at the faces of my former colleagues. Some looked confused. Some looked excited. And a few looked nervous. Good morning, everyone, I began. As you may have heard, there's been a leadership change. Richard Hayes is no longer with the company. I've been appointed as the new head of development. There were murmurs throughout the room. Louise caught my eye and gave me a subtle thumbs up. I know this is sudden, I continued, but I want to assure you that this change is for the better. We're going to refocus on what matters. Delivering quality work, meeting deadlines, supporting each other, and most importantly, treating each other with respect. I paused, letting my words sink in. If anyone has concerns or questions, my door is always open. We're a team, and I want us to succeed together. The meeting wrapped up, and as people filed out, several coworkers came up to congratulate me. Henry, this is amazing. You deserve this. Thanks, I said genuinely. I'm looking forward to working with all of you. As the room emptied, I noticed someone lingering near the back. Andre. She was standing by the door, her arms crossed, staring at me with an unreadable expression. I walked over to her. Andre. Didn't expect to see you here. I needed to talk to you, she said quietly. Is it true? You got Richard fired? I got promoted, I corrected. Richard got himself fired by doing a terrible job. Her eyes narrowed. This is because of me, isn't it? You really think you're that important? I asked, raising an eyebrow. This has nothing to do with you, Andre. This is about me being good at my job. Something you and Richard clearly forgot. She looked like she wanted to say something, but instead, she just shook her head and walked away. I watched her go, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Relief, satisfaction, and maybe, just maybe, a tiny sliver of sadness. But that sadness didn't last long. Because when I returned to my office, I found a message waiting for me. It was from Richard. You think you've won. But this isn't over. You're going to pay for what you did. I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it. Richard could threaten me all he wanted. But the reality was simple. I had won. He was gone. I was in charge. And there was nothing he could do about it. As I sat down at my new desk, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about reclaiming my life. About proving that I wasn't just some victim who would quietly fade away. I was stronger than that. And I was just getting started. 3 weeks into my new role, everything was running smoothly. The team was motivated, projects were ahead of schedule, and client satisfaction was at an all-time high. Vanguard Industries sent an email praising the turnaround, and Janet called to personally congratulate me. "You're doing an incredible job, Henry. The board is impressed." "Thanks, Janet. I couldn't have done this without your support." "You earned this on your own," she said firmly. "Don't sell yourself short." As good as things were professionally, the personal drama was far from over. Richard had been quiet since his termination, which made me uneasy. A man like him doesn't just accept defeat and walk away. He plots, he schemes, he waits for the perfect moment to strike back. And that moment came sooner than I expected. It was a Friday afternoon when I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You need to see this." I hesitated before opening it, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a single link to a private video file. I clicked it, and my stomach dropped. It was security footage from inside Stellar Tech. Footage of me accessing Richard's computer late one night, going through his files. The timestamp was from 2 weeks before he was fired. My heart raced. I had accessed his computer, but only to gather evidence of his mismanagement, budget discrepancies, missed deadlines, client complaints, all legitimate reasons for his termination. But taken out of context, this footage made it look like I was sabotaging him. Below the video link was a message. Interesting, isn't it? I wonder what Vanguard would think if they saw this. Maybe they'd reconsider who the real problem was at Stellar Tech. "You have 24 hours to resign, or this goes public, Richard." I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. This was exactly the kind of move I expected from Richard. Desperate, vindictive, and potentially effective. If Vanguard saw this footage without context, it could raise questions. They might think I manipulated the situation to get Richard fired. They might doubt my integrity. And in the corporate world, doubt is all it takes to destroy a career. But I wasn't going to panic. I wasn't going to give Richard the satisfaction. I immediately called Janet. "We need to meet. Now." An hour later, we were sitting in a private conference room. I showed her the email and the video. She watched the footage carefully, her expression unreadable. When it finished, she looked up at me. "Is this real?" "Yes," I admitted. "But it's not what it looks like." I accessed Richard's computer to gather evidence of his mismanagement. Everything I found was legitimate. I didn't fabricate anything. "Do you have proof of that?" "I do," I said, pulling out my laptop. I had made copies of everything. Budget reports showing overspending. Emails where Richard ignored client concerns. Timelines proving projects were delayed under his leadership. I showed Janet all of it. She reviewed the documents thoroughly, then nodded. "This is solid, Henry. You didn't do anything wrong. You were doing your due diligence." "But Richard is going to try to spin this," I said. "He's going to make it look like I set him up." "Let him try," Janet said confidently. "Vanguard has already reviewed your work. They know the turnaround you've accomplished. And more importantly, they know Richard's track record. If he tries to go public with this, it's only going to make him look desperate and vindictive. So I don't need to resign." "Absolutely not," she said firmly. "In fact, I'm going to reach out to our legal team. If Richard tries to blackmail you or damage your reputation, we'll hit him with a lawsuit so fast his head will spin." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "Thank you, Janet. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'd figure it out," she said with a smile. "You're tougher than you think, Henry." That night, I didn't respond to Richard's email. I didn't resign. I didn't do anything. I just waited. The next morning, Richard made good on his threat. The video was posted anonymously on a company gossip forum, along with a caption, accusing me of sabotaging him to steal his job. Within hours, it was spreading. Co-workers were talking. Rumors were flying. Some people believed it. Others didn't. Louise came to my office, looking concerned. "Henry, have you seen what's being said online?" "I have," I said calmly. "Is it true? Did you really go through Richard's files?" "I did," I admitted. "But not for the reasons people think. I was gathering evidence of his mismanagement. Everything I found was real." Louise studied me for a moment, then nodded. "I believe you. Man. Richard was always shady. Everyone knew it." "Thanks, Louise. That means a lot." By mid-afternoon, Vanguard's legal team had issued a statement. It was posted on the company intranet and sent to all employees. Subject: false allegations against leadership. It has come to our attention that false and misleading information is being spread regarding Henry Lawson and his appointment as head of development. These allegations are baseless and have been reviewed thoroughly by our legal and HR teams. Mr. Lawson acted within company policy and ethical guidelines at all times. Any further attempts to spread misinformation or damage Mr. Lawson's reputation will result in legal action. Vanguard Industries stands fully behind Mr. Lawson and his leadership. The statement was clear, firm, and left no room for doubt. Richard's plan had backfired spectacularly. But Richard wasn't done yet. That evening, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello?" "Henry," it was Andrea. Her voice sounded shaky, almost panicked. "We need to talk. It's about Richard." "What about him?" "He's losing it, Henry. He's been drinking non-stop, talking about how you ruined his life. He's saying things that are scaring me." "That's not my problem," I said coldly. "Henry, please. I know I don't deserve your help, but I think he might do something stupid. He mentioned your name. He mentioned your address." My blood ran cold. "Are you saying he's threatening me?" "I don't know," she said, her voice breaking. "Maybe. I just thought you should know." I hung up and immediately called building security, alerting them to the potential threat. Then I called Janet and filled her in. "I'm sending security to your apartment tonight," she said. "And I'm filing a restraining order against Richard first thing Monday morning." "Thank you." That night, I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow outside my window made my heart race. But Richard never showed up. The next day, I found out why. He had been arrested, drunk and disorderly conduct outside Andrea's apartment. Apparently, after she had called to warn me, she tried to break things off with him. He didn't take it well. The police report said he had been shouting, breaking things, and refusing to leave. Andrea had called the cops, and Richard had been taken into custody. When I heard the news, I felt a strange sense of closure. Richard had destroyed himself. I didn't have to do anything. His anger, his bitterness, his inability to accept responsibility for his actions had been his own undoing. A few days later, I received a handwritten letter in the mail. It was from Andrea. "Henry, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to read this, but I need to say it anyway. I was wrong, about everything. I thought Richard was what I wanted. I thought he understood me in ways you didn't. But I was lying to myself. The truth is, you were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it away for someone who didn't even care about me. Richard used me. He never loved me. He just wanted to prove he could take you down, and I was stupid enough to let him. I know it's too late now. I know I hurt you in ways I can never fix. But I hope one day you can find happiness again. You deserve it. Andrea." I read the letter twice, then folded it and put it in a drawer. Part of me felt vindicated. She finally understood what she had lost. But another part of me felt nothing. Because the truth was, I had already moved on. 6 months later, my life looked completely different. Stellar Tech was thriving under my leadership. The company had secured 3 major new clients, and employee morale was at an all-time high. Vanguard Industries offered me a seat on their advisory board, a position usually reserved for executives with decades of experience. I had proven myself. Not just to Vanguard, not just to my team, but to myself. Richard had dropped off the radar entirely. After his arrest, he moved to another city. I heard through the grapevine that he was working at a small startup, a significant step down from his previous position. His reputation in the industry was destroyed. No major company would touch him. As for Andrea, I ran into her once, about 4 months after everything happened. It was at a coffee shop near the office. She was sitting alone, staring at her laptop, looking tired and defeated. I could have walked past her. Pretended I didn't see her. But something made me stop. "Andrea," I said. She looked up, startled. "Henry. Hi. Can I sit?" She hesitated, then nodded. We sat in awkward silence for a moment before she spoke. "I heard about everything you've accomplished. Congratulations." "Thanks. You deserve it," she said quietly. "You always did." I didn't respond. She took a breath, clearly gathering courage. "Henry, I know I have no right to ask. But do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I thought about it carefully before answering. Forgiveness isn't the right word. I don't hate you anymore, if that's what you're asking. But I also don't want you in my life. What you did hurt me. Deeply. And I can't just forget that. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I understand. I hope you find what you're looking for. Andrea. I really do. But it's not going to be with me." "I know," she whispered. I stood up, ready to leave, but she called out. "Henry, wait." I turned back. "For what it's worth," she said, her voice breaking, You were the best thing that ever happened to me. And I'll regret losing you for the rest of my life. I looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Goodbye, Andre. I walked out of the coffee shop and didn't look back. That encounter gave me a strange sense of peace. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need her regret. I had already moved on. A few weeks later, Luis invited me out for drinks with some of the team. It was a Friday night, and we ended up at a trendy bar downtown. The atmosphere was lively, and for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely happy. We were laughing and joking when someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around and found myself face to face with Janet. Janet? I said, surprised. What are you doing here? She smiled. I could ask you the same thing. I'm here with some friends from Vanguard. We're celebrating a successful quarter. That's great, I said. Congratulations. She glanced at my group of coworkers, then back at me. Mind if I steal you for a minute? Sure. We stepped away from the noise, finding a quieter corner of the bar. Janet looked at me seriously. Henry, I wanted to talk to you about something. Vanguard is opening a new division. It's going to focus on innovation and emerging technologies. We need someone to lead it. Someone smart, driven, and trustworthy. I stared at her. Are you offering me the job? I'm offering you the opportunity, she said. It's a big step up. More responsibility. More visibility. But I think you're ready for it. I was speechless. Just a year ago, I was a regular employee at Stellar Tech, working under a boss who betrayed me. Now, I was being offered a leadership position at one of the biggest corporations in the industry. I don't know what to say, I admitted. Say you'll think about it, Janet said with a smile. We're not in a rush. But I wanted you to know that we see your potential, Henry. And we want to invest in it. Thank you, I said sincerely. I mean it, Janet. You've changed my life. You changed your own life, she corrected. I just gave you a little push. As she walked back to her friends, I stood there, processing everything. A year ago, I thought my life was over. I thought the betrayal would break me. But instead, it made me stronger. I returned to my coworkers, and Luis immediately asked, what was that about? Just work stuff, I said, grinning. He raised his glass. To Henry, the boss who actually knows what he's doing. Everyone laughed and clinked glasses. As I looked around at their smiling faces, I realized something important. This was my life now. Surrounded by people who respected me. Leading a team I believed in. Building a future I could be proud of. Richard and Andre had tried to destroy me. But all they did was push me towards something better. A few months later, I accepted Janet's offer and moved into the new role at Vanguard Industries. It was challenging, demanding, and exactly what I needed. I threw myself into the work, building the division from the ground up. And as the months passed, I found myself thinking about Richard and Andre less and less. They had become footnotes in my story, painful chapters that taught me valuable lessons, but not the ending. One evening, I was working late in my new office when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Henry, this is Andre. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I'm seeing a therapist now, working on myself, trying to understand why I made the choices I did. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to say thank you for showing me what real integrity looks like. I hope you're happy. You deserve it. I read the message, then set my phone down without responding. I didn't need to respond. That chapter of my life was closed. I looked out the window of my office, at the city lights stretching out below. Somewhere out there, Richard was probably still bitter, still angry, still blaming everyone but himself for his failures. Somewhere out there, Andre was trying to rebuild her life, living with the consequences of her choices. But I wasn't thinking about them anymore. I was thinking about the future. About the next project. The next challenge. The next opportunity. Because the truth is, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's living well. It's building something better. It's proving that you're stronger than the people who tried to break you. Richard and Andre thought they could destroy me. But all they did was forge me into someone unstoppable. And as I sat there in my office, overlooking the city, I smiled. Because I had won. Not by destroying them, but by building something they could never touch. My success. My happiness. My future. And that was the greatest victory of all.